Hello, good evening. The BBC has learned that tens of millions of pounds of public money is feared to have been lost to fraudsters who are targeting the government's universal credit benefit system. Often pretending to be from the local job centre, the scammers offer to get money on behalf of claimants in return for a fee. The unsuspecting claimants often realise they've been duped only when their current benefits stop and they're left in debt and having to repay the money to the government. One government source has told us that around 100,000 requests for universal credit loans are made each month and 10% are suspected to be fraudulent, with a typical illegal loan totalling around £1,500. It means fraud with universal credit is potentially 4 times higher than with other benefits. With this exclusive report, here's our social affairs correspondent, Michael Buchanan.
Universal Credit is a new service that helps ensure you're better off in work than you are on benefits.
It's the welfare benefit that has become the fraudster's friend. And how much did you get?
In my bank account was £1,525.
And how much did you have to pay him?
£1,000.
Exploiting an online loophole to leave people in debt.
They told me to put in for universal credit.
And that was the first you knew of it?
And that was the first to know.
Tens of millions of pounds stolen from taxpayers.
To see that it's happening on this extent is an absolute scandal.
Jade Thomas is a victim of the fraudsters. She was offered £500 by a man who said he could access government grants. Unbeknown to her, the mum of 5 was signed up online for universal credit. The first she knew was when her other benefits were stopped and she went to the job centre.
They told me that they'd signed up for 5 children with different names, children I don't have with different ages. They told me that I'd been signed up with a 5-bedroom house when I'm only in a 3.
The fraudster took 2/3 of the £1,500 he'd claimed on her behalf. The money was a loan. She has to pay it all back to the government, but she wasn't the only one.
I'd say altogether there's one before me and my friend, and 4 to 5 others, so about 7, 8 people.
And he was signing you all up fraudulent for universal credit?
Yeah.
In an hour or 2?
Mm-hmm.
So over those couple of hours, he made thousands of pounds?
Yeah.
Job centre officials say the extent of the fraud is staggering, that money is pouring out of the public purse. Messages on an internal government online forum seen by the BBC highlight the extent of the problems. How many more times can claimants add children named Ha, Ha and Ha to their UC claims, or add a landlord called Harry Kane, or add any other obviously made-up names to claim a UC advance? This is a massive issue. They are literally making up street names and children. I have Lisa, Bart and Homer recently, Simpsons cartoon characters, getting the money and we never hear from them again. A lot of what we see is uni students being approached to make a claim for a fee, 19 years old with 6 blind children. The loss of taxpayers' money could be in the region of £20 million.
This is absolutely a slap in the face to people who are struggling and in poverty, that the government are wasting money on fraud that they should be stopping and preventing before this rollout goes any further.
Angela Parry is now paying the cost of being scammed. She's been investigated for fraud after a man claimed he could offer her a payday loan, but instead signed her up for universal credit. So you're going to have to pay £60 a month until you repay the £1,500?
Yeah.
And you've lost the benefits you were on?
Yeah.
What have the past few weeks been like?
Bit daunting, thinking my rent, council tax and things, where I'm going to get the food, where I'm going to get gas and lecky. They told me to go to a food bank.
One irony of these problems is that universal credit was actually designed to save £1 billion in fraud and error.
Well, that was our social affairs correspondent Michael Buchanan reporting. Joining me now, the Labour MP Ruth George. You saw her in that film. She set up and chairs the all-party group on universal credit. Good evening.
Good evening.
A word first about your constituents. Are they directly affected by this?
Yes, I had several constituents who are affected by fraud. I've raised it in Parliament with ministers several times and written to them about it as well.
And when you've done that, what kind of response have you had?
I first raised one case with the Secretary of State over 8 weeks ago, 2 months ago. A constituent who'd been defrauded, told she was taking out a loan. She had 3 children and is pregnant, and again was left absolutely destitute, like the lady in your story. So I begged them to take this up urgently and to look at it, but they've not acted on it in all that time. I asked them to look at the principle of fraud and how they treat people who are defrauded, and again, they've not acted.
What do you say they should be doing to combat this?
I think they're going to have to look again at the system of claiming advances for universal credit solely online, because it's not working without that proof of identity of someone turning up at the job centre. So I think that they're going to have to move towards that safeguard. But in order to protect people and do that, they're going to have to stop this 5-week wait for universal credit. That's the reason they introduced the advances in the first place. But this just isn't working. And as you say, people are being left destitute. So it needs sorting.
So you're talking there of face-to-face verification of people to try and get around the fraudsters?
I think that's the only way that they're going to be able to get around the sort of online claims that we're seeing, where fraudsters are often turning up on someone's doorstep, asking to see their identification documents and using those. And once somebody's identity has been stolen, then it can be used time and again. So it's really important to put in place some checks to stop that happening.
Can I put to you what the DWP is saying? This is saying the Department of Work and Pensions, aware of the issue, have team of staff working to identify cases of fraud, have secured our first conviction on the issue. They also give some advice, and you may or may not endorse this, but they say we're encouraging people to not give out their bank and personal details to people, and if anyone believes they may have been subject to a scam, they should contact Action Fraud and speak to Job Centre Plus. I mean, do you go with that, or do you say that's not sufficient?
That's absolutely not sufficient. I mean, they've secured one conviction. We're seeing, as your story showed, around 10,000 cases every month. It's just a tiny drop in the ocean. And I'm afraid people do have to give away a lot of their identification sources in order to do anything like claim a loan online. These are people who are absolutely on their knees often because they can't get enough money to get by, and they're driven to desperate measures, whether it's from a payday lender or from anyone who says that they can help them to claim a grant or any source of income. So it's just not good enough to say to people, don't give away your identity, because people are having to do this all the time just to get by, even without fraudsters about.
Thank you very much for coming on, Ruth George, Labour MP.
Welcome.
And we'll find out how this story and many others are covered in tomorrow's front pages. At 10:40 this evening in the papers, and the guests joining me tonight are Nicola Bartlett, the political correspondent for the Daily Mirror, and the broadcaster David Davies.